Leaders, what does it look like for us to not just work in it, but work on it? Do you have a clear vision yet for what this season is calling you for?
Welcome to the Next Level Leadership Drip, where we aim to fill your leadership cup one episode at a time. Well, welcome back, leaders. I'm joined again by my co-host, Pastor Charles, and we're excited to dive in to today's topic. Today, we want to talk about how to get from where we are to where we're going. Because, come on, Pastor Charles, nothing is more frustrating as a leader than knowing where we want to go, but not knowing how to get there.
Yes, so true, right? I mean, think about, we know that we need more serve team members, but we're so busy doing the actual work of serving in the ministry, we have no idea how we're going to get them.
Or we know we need to be more intentional about pastoring those on our team, but it just feels like we're always so busy or we're too stuck in the details. Or if you joined in episode 1, you know that I was talking about how we have a vision for SEU at NLC to double in size. And I'll be honest with you, marketing is not my strong suit. So I know where we need to go, but it can be frustrating to not know how to get there. And if you've been along this leadership journey with us, you know that in episode 1, we talked about the importance of vision and preparation. And then in episode 2, we talked about the importance of evaluating where we are. And as a reminder, vision defines where we're going and evaluation defines where we are. Today, we actually want to talk about how to create simple, measurable action steps that move our vision and the people we lead forward with both intentionality and success. You know, think about this example, this journey we've been on back to the mountain. If vision is the mountain we're climbing and evaluation is giving an account to where we are on the mountain, today we're going to talk about how to map out our course. How do we know which path to take? And so if you're into titles, today's episode is called, Are We There Yet?
I've asked myself that many times, and I have 3 little girls who love, at least 2 of them love to ask that question, especially when we're driving anywhere. Are we there yet? Right? So I love, Pastor Ashley, we started out talking about vision, and I love what you said. Vision is helping us describe where we're going. And I would also say, you know, we'll add to that, it also reminds us why we're going there.
That's great.
And you know, there's, as you mentioned, what does that feel like for a leader when there's so much clarity, and for a team when there's so much clarity around where we're going? You have an instant moment of confidence, because that type of clarity brings confidence. Here's the challenge. If you want more than a moment of confidence, that moment needs to move into momentum. And the only way to move that moment of confidence into momentum is to go beyond the vision. We talked about the idea of not only is it vision, as you mentioned before, but you know, evaluating where you are. Here's a biblical story that really comes to mind when I think about this is Nehemiah. Nehemiah, one of the greatest leaders in Scripture, we see he has a really clear vision. You see it in chapter 1. Where God lays a burden on his heart. He hears about the walls of Jerusalem being torn down, and he looks at the king in this incredible moment, and he says, help me. Will you release me to go build this wall? I'm paraphrasing. In chapter 2, he goes and he surveys the wall, and he looks at all of the people in the community. He says, hey, come on, let's rebuild this wall. There's a clear moment of clarity. That's the vision. He knew how he was going to evaluate it, and we know in Nehemiah, we see noted that the Bible clearly says they were halfway. They were halfway there. The Bible clearly says they built it in 52 days. So they were counting. In other words, they knew how to measure their success. But can you imagine that? You're there. You're in the moment. Nehemiah rallies everybody together. Let's rebuild the wall. Yes. Here's how we're going to do. You know, we know we're going to measure it in cubits. Great, whatever that means. Now, here's the next question. How in the world do we go from knowing that to actually doing it? Who's going to take what step? And that, my friends, is where, as leaders, we have these incredible things called goals, right? You may have heard of them. SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, or action-worthy. I don't know.
Achievable.
Relevant. There you go. There's so many.
Time-bound.
Time-bound. Yes, we love our acronyms, right? You've heard of management by objectives. That's a throwback maybe to the 80s or 90s for many of us, right? I've even heard it phrased big, hairy, audacious goals, like, ew, right? I don't think I want anything that sounds like that. But yes, we're going to simplify it. We're going to call them objectives and key results, a great way of taking that moment of clarity and moving it into momentum.
Yeah. And here is what I know. In my experience, I've learned that humans are hardwired to want to win. I
Let's
actually
go.
took a moment when I was preparing for this episode and I looked it up. And psychologically, like there is a competitive nature in us that we
Yes.
want to know how to win.
Yes.
And as leaders, we actually have to be equipped to teach the people that we lead how to win.
Come on.
And so in the context
So
in which
true.
we lead, we actually embody this on an organizational level. So we every year have a rally cry. This is our vision. And so this past year, it's been stewarding well what God has entrusted to us. And then we have trimesters. And so 3, trimesters, 3 points in the year where we have a strategic moment to actually pause and evaluate. And by the way, if you didn't know, you can actually go to nextlevelchurch.com/leadership-drip, and we have leader guides available to you that you can actually go back and review some of the information that we've been talking about. But we also have ways that you can actually drip this into your leadership. And so we talked about leadership development plans last time and dashboards. So these are ways that we can strategically slow down and evaluate, which then leads us to then into that objectives and key results season. And here's how we define this very simply. Objectives are simply what we want to accomplish. They're simple, action-oriented, visionary goals. It's, I'm going to successfully lead this initiative, or I'm going to rally the troops to lead this thing. And then key results define how we want to accomplish this. So they're measurable milestones that actually track progress. And I'll say this is where, if you are into SMART goals, more or less key results are just that. We want to make them specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. And the good news is that once we have a clear vision, objectives are often easier to create because we know which direction we should be heading. So let's talk about some examples.
Yes, Pastor, let me state the obvious here, because here's what I know. I know in this group of people, that amazing leaders that are listening to us right now, you're thinking, wait a minute, I thought my goal as a experienced leader was to make sure we hand out the coffee or make sure the cars get parked the right way. And don't get me wrong, yes, those are a part of the plays that we play, right, as we lead people to become fully engaged followers of Jesus through our services. But we're talking not just about working with the team, but now we're talking about working on the team. We're talking about working on the ministry,
Right.
or if you're a business leader, on your business, or on your family. So this goes beyond that. When we think about an example of this, right? So let's take that same, you're a welcome coach, but what you're noticing is not necessarily what's happening on a Sunday, but you're noticing that you're looking around in your team of 20 and you've got an average of 8 people showing up. What we would say is that is engagement. We have an engagement opportunity. So you've called that vision for the season. I'm going to increase engagement, and it's going to be measured by the number of people that show up on Sundays on an average month. Well, great. What are we going to do? If your objective then is, I'm going to increase engagement on Sundays. That's your objective. Super clear. And you know what? Just like Nehemiah, I'm going to encourage you, tell everybody, tell your team, hey, just so you know, we're working on increasing engagement on Sundays, and then you're gonna work on a few different key results. You might say to yourself, I'm gonna send 3 short videos from my phone, casting vision on how to respond to serve team requests. That's a key result. You might say, I'm gonna schedule a weekly check-in with at least one of my team members every single week. I'm gonna love on them like crazy once a week. That's a key result. You might have another one where you say, you know what, I'm going to have a serve team gathering. I'm going to invite everyone after service, and we're going to go have some chicken after, because who doesn't want chicken on a Sunday, right? That's a key result. I'm going to build relationships that way. You might say, I'm going to invite a staff member to come and observe our culture and help figure out how we can have more fun serving together. That's a key result. In other words, you're going to list out, here's what I'm going to do, and here's when I'm going to do it. Now, here's the key. When we're creating these things, we want to make certain that they're actual things that can get done. The objective, increasing engagement on a Sunday, it's okay that feels or may sound a little bit ambiguous. But if your key results or your steps are ambiguous, then it's going to be really hard to determine, did I do it? You want to be able to look at yourself at the end of a month, at the end of a week, and just ask yourself simply, did I do it?
Well, I think about it in the story of Nehemiah. I mean, you mentioned that he must have known at some point, however he was tracking progress, to
Right.
know, hey, we did it. We reached the halfway point. And you have to think that has to be a moment of celebration. People
Yes.
can rally around that. I can't imagine the blood, sweat, and tears that went into that. You know, at one point you read in scripture that they had a sword in one hand and a tool in the other. And so it wasn't just a walk in the park. They were up against some real obstacles. And I think that's the key to understanding the power of objectives and key results, is it actually helps us build momentum. It helps us know that we're moving in the right direction. It helps us to know when we can slow down and celebrate those milestones,
That's it.
because people want to win. And I want you to know, coaches, that you have the ability to create these objectives and key results. It's more than just executing a Sunday service. It's more than just leading a small group on Wednesday nights. You have the power to get creative, involve your staff member. You know, it even goes back to episode 1, where if you don't feel like you have a clear vision, you're just stuck in the doing. Invite people in, ask people, hey, where do I need to
Right.
set my goal, and what are the action steps that I can get there? And I'll also say this, you mentioned that, you know, key results should be aligned with the objectives, but I also want to key in on the A part of SMART goals, the attainable. I think for some of us too, we get a really hefty vision,
Yeah.
you know, and I think it's incredible that Nehemiah built the wall in 52 days, but he might have been ambitious and overly zealous to want to do it in 12. Well, what does that do to the people that he's leading? It overexhausts them. It overexhausts him. He starts to lose momentum. So talk about how we know when, you know, what's the right amount of stretch that we should challenge our teams with.
Yeah, you need to know how much you have in the tank, right? I mean, so I think one way that we can ensure that the goals are actually attainable is that the key results are actually attainable, is that they are matched with why you are where you are. So in other words, if your team is lacking engagement, to use that same example, because people just don't know how to respond to serving requests, well then let's just make simple objectives or key results that relate to teaching them how to do that.
Right.
If it's more of an emotional thing and people lack an understanding of the spiritual why, well then let's just focus on those things and what is realistic that can fit in my schedule, their schedules. What are the easy first downs, right? If you're a football fan, this is not throwing a Hail Mary every single play. This is, what does it look like for me to get a first down? And I've got 4 opportunities to do that. I think that is the way to do it. So leaders, what does it look like for us to not just work in it, but work on it? Do you have a clear vision yet for what this season is calling you for? Have you given account for where you are? Where is your team? Where is your group right now? And how are you going to measure that? And then finally, what are the simple steps that you're going to take? We truly believe in this, that if you have a clear vision and if you submit this to the Lord and to your leaders and then outline, I'm going to challenge us 3 steps. What are 3 steps we can take between now and the next 4 weeks? You will see the needle moved on your team and you will get from here to there.